Good morning. This is a recording for Sunday, April 14th. Let's continue dissecting the first element of developing shame resilience, which is our ability to recognize we're in shame and knowing our shame triggers. Yesterday, we talked about the physical symptoms of shame. Sometimes, most of the time actually, we feel shame before we think it. Today, let's start talking about shame triggers. Brené Brown writes, when I first began my research, one of the goals was to develop a list of shame triggers. My thinking was pretty simple. If we knew what issues triggered shame, we could stay alert and, if not avoid them, at least increase our awareness about the potential of experiencing shame. Of course, it didn't take long to learn that shame is a highly individualized experience, and there are no universal shame triggers. A very strong pattern emerged, though. People with high levels of shame resilience recognize shame and understand their shame triggers. When these research participants talked about shame, they clearly knew what triggered it and why some issues were greater triggers than others. Don't worry though, recognizing and understanding our triggers is not something that we instinctively know how to do. It's a process. To start this process, we need to look at the concept of unwanted identities. Over the course of Brené Brown's interviews, 12 categories emerged as areas in which people struggle the most with feelings of shame. 1. Appearance and body image. 2. Motherhood or fatherhood. 3. Family. 4. Parenting. 5. Money and work. 6. Mental and physical health. 7. Sex. 8. Aging. 9. Religion. 10. Being stereotyped and labeled. 11. Speaking out. And finally, 12. Surviving trauma. What makes us vulnerable to shame in these areas are those unwanted identities associated with each of these topics. So, where do these unwanted identities come from? Of course, the messages and stereotypes that are the most powerful, the most hurtful, are those that we learned from our parents or immediate caregivers. Sometimes teachers, clergy, and other important adults in our lives may have helped shape our thinking. However, research shows that parents and caregivers are by far the most influential. Brené Brown says, I would venture to say that when it comes to these 12 shame categories, every family has identities they value and likewise unwanted identities that are seen as shameful, unacceptable, or unworthy. She describes her own situation too. She says, in my family, being sick was an unwanted identity. We never really talked about illness. I never heard my parents say anything negative about sickness or health issues. However, I grew up believing that illness was weakness. Interestingly, my parents didn't shame us for being sick, and they were empathic and helpful with neighbors or family members who were sick. However, they were both hard on themselves when they got sick, which was rare. When they were sick, they toughed it out. They didn't slow down. If they had surgery, they were back on carpool duty or back at work right away. So if you combine my upbringing With a culture that despises the sick, you can see how being sick became a powerful, unwanted identity for me. This was never a problem until I became very ill when I was pregnant. Not only did I get sick, I was diagnosed with a pregnancy related condition characterized by extreme nausea, vomiting, and dehydration. So there I was, throwing up 25 times a day, unable to keep down ice chips, hospitalized for severe dehydration, and spending what little energy I had trying to figure out if any of the hospital rooms had internet access, or if maybe my husband could videotape me teaching from bed. That way the dean wouldn't need to bring in another instructor to take over my class. I kept telling my husband, "This can't be happening. I am tough. I don't get sick." Finally, he lovingly held my face in his hands and said, "Well, apparently you do get sick. And right now you are not so tough. You're human, just like the rest of us. You really need to work through this. You are not going back to work for a couple of months. This is very serious. You need to apply some of your own shame medicine to yourself right now." Family messages die hard, and many times they're very insidious. The messages become part of the fabric of our families. Until we can recognize and understand why and how they influence our lives, we just keep living by them and passing them down to the next generation. I don't believe my parents consciously introduced the messages about illness and weakness to our family. In fact, as I get older, I am able to look back with more clarity and perspective. I am sure they were also prisoners of this message. Both my parents were raised in families where these beliefs about toughness and weakness seem to be encoded in the genes. I think, if anything, they just unknowingly passed them along. And I've had to work very hard to break the cycle with my children. And as my experience demonstrates, it doesn't have anything to do with what I say or how I treat others. I have to actually watch what I do and how I treat myself when I'm feeling sick. I've been asked many times if I think that shame can only be experienced in areas where we have been shamed by our parents or caregivers, but I don't think this is the case. I do believe we are more vulnerable to shame triggers that developed from our childhood. However, I interviewed many people who struggle with shame around issues that stem from other places, namely cultural messages and stereotypes. This is especially true of women and men under 40. For many people in this age group, the media has become the primary storyteller in their lives. So, how do we start to recognize our shame triggers? What do we need to do to start acknowledging our vulnerabilities? Brené Brown thinks we need to begin by examining each of the shame categories and trying to unearth the unwanted identities that cause us shame. She says, as I was interviewing both men and women, many of the same phrases kept coming up in the interviews. The ones that I heard over and over were, "I don't want to be seen as dot dot dot. I don't want people to think I am dot dot dot. I would die if people thought I was dot dot dot. I couldn't stand people thinking I am dot dot dot." As these phrases indicate, shame is about perception. Shame is how we see ourselves through other people's eyes. It's always about how others see me or what others think of me. And often there is even a disconnect between who we want to be and how we want to be perceived. For example, one woman in her 70s said, I am okay when I'm alone. I know I am aging, changing. I know things are slowing down and everything is not what it used to be. I just cannot stand the thought of others seeing it and dismissing me as a person. Being dismissed feels shameful. So in sorry. So in our practice today, let's do some self-reflection around these unwanted identities. As always, you can do this exercise in your mind or you can use your journal for it. We will do it just for a couple of shame categories, but I encourage you to go through all the 12 on your own later. I posted them already in our private group, Mindful Morning Circle. Right now, take a comfortable position and as always, take a few moments to settle. Settle into your body, your heart, your mind. Settle into this moment, right here, right now. Nice and soft breath. As usual, try to find some spaciousness, some freedom in your breathing, so that all the experiences of the present moment can flow through you as energy that they are, without struggle. Now take a deep breath in and finish the sentence. Again, you can do it in your mind or in your journal. When it comes to money, I want to be perceived as fill in the blank. When it comes to money, I want to be perceived as. When it comes to money, I do not want to be perceived as fill in the blank. When it comes to money, I do not want to be perceived as. The next step is to try to uncover the source of these triggers. How and why did these triggers develop in your life? So now let's consider these three questions as it comes to your unwanted identity related to money. As always, I'll give you a few moments to ponder each, and as you do, please keep part of your attention on your body and breath, aware of everything that's going on with you as you do the self-reflection. Question number one. What do these perceptions mean to me? So what does this unwanted identity perception mean to me? When it comes to money, what do these perceptions mean to me? Question number two. Why are these perceptions so unwanted? Why are these perceptions so unwanted? And last question. Where did the messages that fuel these identities come from? Where did the messages that fuel these identities come from? Now take a deep breath in and out, and let's do one more category, exploring it in the same way. First, filling in the blank. When it comes to aging, I want to be perceived as fill in the blank. When it comes to aging, I want to be perceived as. When it comes to aging, I don't want to be perceived as. When it comes to aging, I don't want to be perceived as. And now the same three questions. What do these perceptions mean to me? What do these perceptions mean to me? Why are they so unwanted? Why are they so unwanted? Where did the messages that fuel these identities come from? Where did the messages that fuel these identities come from? Now place your hands on your heart and send the energy of loving kindness to yourself for being here, for doing this exercise. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well in body and mind. May I feel loved, cared for, at ease. May I know that I am enough. May I touch deep, natural peace. And as you gently let go of your practice, as always, scan your body. Notice what's going on for you right now, physically, emotionally, mentally. How are you really? As you go through your day today, I invite you to continue with these self reflection questions, going through all the 12 shame categories. As I mentioned before, I already posted them in our private group, Mindful Morning Circle. As always, enjoy your discoveries no matter whether you like them or not. Just be okay with whatever you find out. The more you know about yourself, the easier it is to transform whatever you want to transform. And of course, if you're inspired to share, please do so. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a gorgeous day, and I will see you tomorrow.